A midlife crisis is more than just a cultural stereotype. It's a real psychological struggle that can surface between the ages of 40 and 60. Often triggered by aging, loss, or unmet expectations, it can actually lead individuals to question their identity, make impulsive choices, or abruptly abandon long term commitments. While not officially classified yet as a mental illness, the emotional and relational fallout is very real, especially for the spouses and families left behind. This podcast gives voice to those living through the aftermath, exposing the hidden pain, and seeking accountability, healing, and understanding. Thank you for joining us today on MLC Bomb Drop and Beyond. The stories and events discussed in this podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or professional advice. Any names, locations, or identifying details have been changed to protect privacy. Any similarities to actual persons, living or dead, or real events are purely coincidental. The information presented on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. Always consult with a qualified expert regarding any decisions related to your specific situation. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the podcast creators. The term midlife crisis was first coined in 1965 by psychologist Elliot Jacques. He noticed that artists, executives, and ordinary men often spiraled around the age of 35 to 45, confronting mortality, questioning meaning, and sometimes burning their entire lives down just to feel young again. For decades, it was mostly dismissed as a stereotype: the red sports car, the younger fling, the sudden divorce. Pop culture reduced it to the cliche that we know it is today. But behind the cliche were real implosions of identity. By the 1980s and 90s, psychologists started calling it a developmental crisis. Jungians spoke of the second half of life, a necessary but dangerous transformation. Some passed through it with wisdom. Others, however, collapse into chaos. Hence, my podcast. What no one wanted to say out loud was when, untreated, unsupported, or fused with narcissistic traits, midlife crisis doesn't just wreck the person in crisis, it devastates the spouse, the children, the community. It destroys entire families. So what happens when the questioning of midlife doesn't just stay psychological, but plunges into something darker? Well, this is what many call the domain of darkness. It's not literal darkness, it's a psychological, spiritual, and moral fog that consumes the person in crisis. They no longer live in the same reality as their family. It's as though they've crossed a threshold into a shadow world. The dark tunnel. Midlife crisis has long been described as a tunnel. The person can't see the light at the other end. They're gripped by fear, regret, shame, unmet needs. Their choices come from avoidance, denial, and impulsivity. To the outside world, especially to the spouse and family, it looks like they've been completely swallowed up whole by this darkness. In this state, empathy and conscience shut down. They detach from the family. They detach from their values. They detach from their former identity. Survivors often describe the look in their eyes as shark eyes, hollow, soulless, as if the person's essence is gone. They operate in a moral void, a place where love, responsibility, and loyalty simply do not exist. There's layers of this darkness. Psychological, which is depression, despair, dissociation. We saw that even in court. In family court, you'll see a lot of dissociation. You'll see it everywhere throughout this MLC. There's spiritual, rejecting truth, clinging to ego, and embracing betrayal. There is the darkness of relational, abandoning loved ones, living in deception, and consumed by obsession or rage. And some, of course, eventually awaken and stumble out of that tunnel. Some never do. But for those left behind, it feels like their spouse has been trapped in a realm of shadows, unreachable until or if they choose to return to the light. And here's the chilling truth. The longer someone lives in the domain of darkness, the more the lies calcify. Betrayal becomes habit. The moral compass corrodes. In biblical terms, it mirrors exile, being cut off from covenant, being cut off from God, from light. And into that exile comes the serpent. The serpent is the affair partner, the AP. Here she appears at the very moment of weakness. And just like the serpent in Eden, the AP whispers, "You deserve better. You deserve freedom. You deserve me." They offer the fruit, and it looks like pleasure. It tastes like freedom, but it rots the soul. The AP doesn't just become a fling. Too often, they become the puppeteer. They control the phone, the email, the legal battle. They draft the lies. They fuel the smear campaign. They push the MLCer to destroy their own family, all to protect the serpent. And the spouse in crisis obeys this as though they're bewitched. The serpent thrives in darkness because light exposes the lie. And in the domain of darkness, the lie is everything. When the serpent wins, the fallout is catastrophic. Families are divided. Children are scarred. False restraining orders get filed. Courts become weapons. And yet, the outside world just shrugs and says, oh, they're just in a midlife crisis. But those of us who've lived it know better. This isn't just a phase, it's annihilation. It's a sickness of spirit. It's something that should be added to the DSM. Ugh. And unless it's named for what it is, the destruction continues unchecked. Not everyone stays in the domain of darkness. Some wake up, broken, realizing the destruction they've caused, and others never do. But you, the left behind spouse, the children, the family, you're not powerless. You are the witnesses. You are the ones who hold the truth. And in naming this for what it is, you can shine light into the darkness. I know a lot of folks ask if the AP sees the MLCer as they're depressed, like what kind of personality are they seeing? Well, apparently the AP at first believes they're the rescuer or the soulmate who brought joy and passion back into the MLCer's life. But then when the fog starts to lift, mood swings appear. The MLCer may seem detached, irritable, less enthusiastic. Withdrawal happens. The fun, adventurous version of them fades, replaced by someone who looks tired, joyless, or just simply checked out. The AP will notice that shift, especially if the relationship was built on constant intensity. The absence of that high is glaring and obvious. So how do they hide their depression? Well, many MLCers are terrified of exposing their inner emptiness because the AP was supposed to be the solution, the fantasy escape from their unhappy life. So admitting that they're depressed undercuts the whole affair narrative. So they continue to put on a mask of normalcy, still going through the motions. They distract themselves with work, spending, or even more drama. They'll eventually confide less and less in the AP, creating emotional distance. Over time, the cracks show. The AP may start to feel like they aren't enough to keep the MLCer happy. And very commonly, they do take it out on the AP. When depression, shame, and disillusionment surface, the MLCer may blame the AP for not being as exciting as they once seemed. Irritability, criticism, or passive-aggressive behaviors replace affection. Just as they once devalued the spouse, they now turn the same cycle on the AP, and apparently much worse, because they are now so emotionally distraught. And this is why many affair relationships eventually collapse. The AP becomes the next scapegoat for the MLCer's unresolved inner turmoil. As they peek out of that tunnel, the MLCer's depression becomes harder to mask, and the AP usually feels it, often takes the brunt of it, and realizes that the fantasy relationship doesn't insulate them from the reality of the MLCer's actual crisis. One thing, the MLCer often wants to prove that the new relationship with the AP is real and that it's serious. Oftentimes, getting engaged, buying a house, this fast tracks that validation. So he or she can say, see, it's not just an affair, we're actually building a life together. It gives a public facing image of commitment to cover the shame or the instability that they feel inside. Leaving their spouse often leaves the MLCer feeling completely exposed, guilty, or even powerless. Buying property gives a false sense of control. Like, hey, this is mine. I made this choice. I'm not the one who lost everything. I'm building something new. It's a quick way to paper over the reality that they've destroyed stability rather than created it. The new home represents a fresh identity. They don't want reminders of their past family life, so they try to physically erase it with a different house, a different partner, and new routines. It's kind of a stage set for the new life fantasy. The AP is often expecting rapid commitment. The MLCer, who is desperate to secure this person's devotion and avoid abandonment, rushes into big gestures, homes, cars, trips. Buying a house becomes part of the performance of the soulmate connection. Because many APs are unstable or opportunistic, the MLCer may feel that they have to lock it in before the AP bolts, which they will. So a home purchase feels like a chain, binding them together financially and practically, not just emotionally. Sometimes it's a way to say, I'm fine without you. They want to show the discarded spouse, the kids, extended family that they are thriving. Even if it's reckless and unstable, it's a pride move, not a logical one. In short, that home purchase is less about housing and more about fantasy, image, ego, and fear. It usually masks insecurity, not stability, often ending in yet more financial strain or yet another move when the illusion cracks, which it will. One thing that also happens with the MLCer and the AP is when the MLCer gets to play the role of hero parent without the weight of their own history. With their kids, there are memories of tension, expectations, and responsibilities. But with the AP's kids, it's a clean slate validation. They can swoop in and feel admired right off the bat. There's an avoidance of guilt. Their own children are a mirror of what they have destroyed. Interacting with them reminds the MLCer of failure, broken promises, and shame. It's easier to transfer that parental energy elsewhere. Affair partners often represent the new life, so taking on the AP's children is part of that fantasy, like stepping into a ready made family where they can rewrite themselves as the good guy or the good mom. But the impact on the abandoned kids, watching your parent invest in another family while neglecting you sends the message that you were not enough. Children internalize that rejection, often leading to self esteem issues, anxiety, or depression. And newsflash, I'm saying children of any age, adult children, they feel that too, especially if they have children of their own and that parent in MLC is a grandparent. It just reverberates. It's not just divorce, it's being erased and replaced. That creates a trauma closer to abandonment than separation. But meanwhile, having the MLCer step into parenting roles for the AP's children is proof to them of commitment. It's total power play. It signals that the AP's household is now the center of gravity, not the MLCer's past family. They're just old news. But it's a short-term win. The AP may not realize or may not care that this is a displacement dynamic. It is not genuine parenting. The long-term reality is the pattern usually doesn't last. MLCers often cycle through APs and can repeat the same neglect with the next new family. It just becomes a revolving door. Children of the AP may also grow resentful. The fantasy fades, and they start to see the dysfunction. And many MLCers eventually circle back, realizing the gaping hole they created with their own children, but sometimes it's too late. The MLCer isn't truly parenting. They're role-playing to feed ego and escape accountability. And meanwhile, do affair partners ever truly apologize or feel remorse? Well, some do, but many don't. A genuine apology requires insight, accountability, and empathy for the pain they've caused. Many APs, especially those with narcissistic traits or who were themselves in a dysfunctional pattern, they totally struggle to admit wrongdoing. Instead, they will rationalize. They'll go around saying, I didn't break up the marriage, it was already broken, and they'll shift blame. Some may apologize superficially if they fear consequences like social exposure, damage to their reputation, loss of the affair partner. But honestly, true remorse means voluntarily acknowledging harm, even when it costs them something. And this is rare. In midlife crisis dynamics, the AP often fills a role as the rescuer or escape fantasy. Admitting harm would shatter that narrative. Many would rather cling to denial than face guilt. If the affair partner has tied their entire self worth to the affair, such as he or she chose me, I'm better than their wife or husband, if that's their mentality, then the end of the relationship can trigger severe emotional collapse. In cases where the AP already has fragile mental health, APs are more prone to cycles of anger, bitterness, and blame shifting when things unravel. They often project resentment onto the abandoned spouse, yet again, or the MLCer, rather than turning the blame inward. So, true apologies from APs are rare. Most protect their self image instead of taking responsibility. Hey, some resources that are available for you guys are thewifeexpert.com. That's Lori McDermott over there at thewifeexpert.com. She also has a new app out. There's tons of videos that can give you all kinds of information on no matter where you are on your MLC journey or trying to reconcile with your spouse. So check out thewifeexpert.com. And if you're not sure if your spouse or yourself is in maybe approaching or in a midlife crisis, be sure to check out Kenda Root's quiz at midlifecrisismarriageadvocate.com. Again, that's a midlifecrisismarriageadvocate.com. That's a quick little 2-minute quiz. It's free. So check that out as well. We have a ton of resources out there for you guys. So check them out. Thanks. And you guys, forward moving spouses, you are not alone. Left behind spouses, you are not alone. Those in crisis, you are certainly not alone. This is just crazy how epidemic this has become. I have a waiting list now of people from around the world that I'm trying to get to. And if you've been through a midlife crisis or been impacted by someone else's and you want to share your story, I'd love to hear from you. Hang in there, you guys. I will get to all of you. Please reach out to me at mlcbombdrop@gmail.com and visit us on Facebook and Instagram, MLC Bomb Drop. And just remember, your voice matters. Your story could be the one that helps someone else feel seen. It could help someone else feel heard. And it will help somebody else feel understood. You are not alone, no matter where you are in your journey. If the bomb was just dropped, the earthquake just happened, if you are 7 or 8 years in and you're coming out of starting to wake up and awaken to this, you are not alone. It's sad that this is epidemic, but we're here to provide support. So until next time, take care and live authentically each and every day. Thanks again, you guys.